How do we get to this 10 trillion? Is Nvidia becoming the most valuable company in the US, or do we see these other tech giants moving higher along with it?
Yes, and let me remind you that I had said years ago that NVIDIA would surpass Apple to become the world's most valuable company. Now it's nipping at its heels. What is going on with NVIDIA that is unique from a company like Apple or Microsoft is, as you know, it's fueling the AI infrastructure. This is really important to understand because Hopper architecture drove us to about 90 billion data center revenue. NVIDIA is quickly releasing the next architecture. It's called Blackwell. It will be out before the end of this year. That we think can bring us to a $200 billion data center by the end of fiscal year 2026. So that's calendar 2025, meaning that this next cadence of generation, which is Blackwell, will equal or slightly exceed Hopper. And there's reasons for that, which is that it will empower and enable trillion plus parameter large language models, which is exactly where big tech is trying to go. So those components altogether equal a very large hardware data center segment. Then we have software coming, which I could talk at length about, but I won't, I'll be brief. And then the third one is automotive. So we have a lot coming. This is very, very early for NVIDIA, and there's a few layers to it.
Recently, Canada announced that it'll spend $2.4 billion on homegrown AI, and Nvidia is very likely to be their top choice in this project. Why is that? Because obviously Nvidia is the leader in developing GPUs and chipsets that power advanced AI systems, and increased investment and research for AI in Canada could drive further demand for Nvidia's products. The $2.4 billion spending package is aimed at retaining and attracting top AI talent in Canada, and this talent will need powerful AI computing platforms like those provided by Nvidia. So, in today's video, we're going to talk about how Canada's AI investment is great news for Nvidia and Nvidia stock investors, and why Nvidia seems to always be the first choice in these leading projects. But before we do that, if you want to keep up with Nvidia's latest updates and keep up with the stock market's latest news, you can follow our Twitter account. We post multiple times daily about the biggest changes and catalysts in the market, so click the follow button if you don't want to miss the newest market updates. Now, back to today's video.
All right, so a lot coming. By the way, Beth, I know you're in Colorado, which I know is Coach Prime country. A lot of optimism. I know you got to believe out there. But your price target's kind of pending on a lot of assumptions, if you will. So one of the assumptions is that the estimates for data centers are too low, and also that the market for the TAM, I should say, for chips is also too low. You cite Lisa Su and other chip CEOs saying that basically the market's even bigger than we all think. Isn't this just a little bit bubblish? I mean, just this idea that no matter what the estimates are, there's even more room to go?
I'm glad that you brought up Lisa Su and then Intel's CEO as well. Lisa Su has a $400 billion data center segment by 2027. What my forecast is that NVIDIA will take the lion's share of that. Intel has a $1 trillion TAM by 2030. Again, my forecast is NVIDIA will take the lion's share of that. So I think that those TAM estimates are in line, and what now needs to be decided is who will get how much of the pie.
So you're also saying that their moat is sustainable, even as we see, you know, a real build out of chip production here in the United States, and of course other companies are trying to catch up. Not to mention the number one customers, I should say, are making their own chips and actually becoming competitors. So how much longer do you see this moat lasting for another 5 years, or does this moat continue to last because you feel like NVIDIA is continuing to ramp up?
There are a few elements there, which is that when big tech makes custom silicon, they're mainly doing it to optimize their own applications. They won't ever become merchant. They won't ever compete on merchant silicon. So what that means is they're not going to commercialize and sell chips the way that NVIDIA does. So NVIDIA has an open runway there. Secondly, the CUDA software platform is what developers learn on. So similar to iOS is really what locked people into the iPhone, because developers were developing applications for the iPhone. The same thing is happening with NVIDIA, which is that the CUDA platform is what software engineers, AI engineers are learning in order to program GPUs. So that helps lock them in. And that combination, right now, I'm calling it an impenetrable moat. So This is not a moat that I see being something that would crumble or erode. Although I do think that, you know, let's fast forward 2030.
Wait,
NVIDIA,
let me just stop.
Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, had talked about sovereign AI before and how every country in the world will need its own AI system. This is what Canada seems to be doing now, as it's allocating billions to build AI infrastructure, and this aligns with Nvidia's strengths. Nvidia can benefit from increased demand for its hardware and software offerings as the funding facilitates more AI labs, startups, and enterprise adoption in Canada. However, the emphasis on developing domestic capabilities creates risks for foreign companies like Nvidia if protectionist policies limit its access to projects. For instance, the $200 million for supporting AI startups and sector adoption offers indirect opportunities through an expanded AI ecosystem. But direct participation for Nvidia may face restrictions. Additionally, compliance costs for Nvidia could rise given that $50 million is allotted for new regulations around responsible and ethical AI development and use. Nvidia will need targeted positioning, partnerships, and local engagement strategies to leverage the spending on infrastructure and talent development while navigating national preferences. These investments herald an exciting new chapter for Nvidia to create monumental value, both for Canada's AI goals and its own growth trajectory. The prospects are vast with Nvidia's proven ability to plan and execute ambitiously. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Investocracy.
Joining me at Post 9, Bernstein's all-star analyst, Stacey Rascon. Welcome. It's good to see you in person.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, when you see NVIDIA do what it is doing, what is your reaction?
I think you have to be there, right? I mean, I'm not surprised that it is doing what it is doing, right? We had the numbers a week or two ago, whenever it was. Clearly, the demand for their products is still off the charts. You've got a product cycle that it's on its way. They took the air pocket transition risk out. Mm-hmm. What's not to love?
I know, but at some point, like when I talked to you the day of earnings, pre-number, we were, I think, at 950.
That's right. And I think I told everybody to sort of relax. Right?
You did.
Right into the frame.
You did. You said it was going to be, I think, mundane.
Yeah.
I mean, it certainly wasn't shocking. But
I mean, to be fair, like
maybe it was. I don't know.
The numbers were, you know, they were a good beat. They were probably in line with sort of the whisper numbers.
Yeah.
But they said two things that I think were really helpful. One is, again, they took that air pocket like transition risk as you go from Hopper to Blackwell. They took that off the table. And then number two, I think his commentary on the pace and timing of the Blackwell ramp, their next generation product, was very supportive. People were thinking it was coming next year. He was pretty clear. We're going to, what was it? He said we'll see a lot of Blackwell revenue this year, I think was the quote.
Did you expect that?
I expected it next year. It was earlier than we thought. So at least in terms of like getting material amounts of revenue, that was earlier.
Is that one of the reasons why you raised your price target?
Well, and our numbers went up materially. So it was both of those reasons. But yeah, but it drove the numbers.
But what do you do when the stock continues to outrun you? You know what I mean?
It's not outrunning us yet.
But I mean, it's on the verge of outrunning everybody and everybody's price targets. So, so how do you handle that?
Again, I think we've had this conversation. Where don't get too hung up on the price targets.
I know. I like price targets. I mean, the price targets matter. People look at the price target and they're like, okay,
they do.
Now what?
People don't update their target prices every single day. You know, for now, I think you can let it run. Though I think that the story is really good. The numbers are going higher, and the stock. Remember, it's not like it's expensive. Like if the numbers come in anywhere close to where I think they can come in, the stock is very inexpensive given the growth trajectory.
What is the risk at this point?
Yeah.
Now the stock's at the highs of the day. Okay, it's up 7.2%. As we're having this, another $76 today.
Yeah. Look, I think in the near term, like there's not a lot of like negative catalysts that are on the way. Again, we know the numbers are fine for now in the near term. We know the product cycles are coming. Computex is next week. Like I don't know if they'll talk as much about data center or Computex. It would be a little weird for that, but you know they're going to be
Jensen's going to speak there.
Jensen's going to speak there. You know, it looks pretty good for now.
It's very likely that Nvidia will be Canada's top choice for more AI development because the company already partnered up with the country's government before. In fact, the Government of Canada signed an agreement with Nvidia in February of 2024, just prior to announcing the country's massive $2.4 billion investment in AI, and Jensen Huang was also notably pressed alongside Canadian AI experts and researchers at the 2024 Canadian AI Summit held in Toronto last month. So he probably took the opportunity to engage with Canada's foremost minds in AI and explore potential collaborations. By collaborating closely with Nvidia, Canada aims to equip itself with the digital infrastructure and skills required to achieve global supremacy in artificial intelligence within the next decade. And this strategic alliance reflects NVIDIA's pole position to equip Canada for next-generation AI breakthroughs. NVIDIA has a proven track record of bringing cutting-edge AI solutions to market globally. It can leverage this expertise to accelerate AI innovation and adoption across sectors in Canada. If executed well, NVIDIA could see surging demand for its AI offerings in Canada, driving up revenues and stock valuations. This can catalyze the company's next phase of growth. In fact, the global AI in governments and public services market is projected to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 16.9% from 2023 to 2030, reaching a value of $51.78 billion that year. NVIDIA already has 90% of the AI server market, so it won't be too surprising if it ends up capturing a massive percentage of the sovereign AI market as well. This might sound a bit optimistic, but if NVIDIA manages to capture 90% of this market, it could generate an extra $45 billion in revenue by 2030, and since NVIDIA is known for smashing expectations, we can't really rule that out. If you made it this far into the video, thank you. These videos take a lot of effort and time to make, so if you enjoyed them, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. This goes a long way in helping us grow. That said, back to the video.
But you're literally telling me there's no risk? I mean,
well, then, look, there's always...
Well, I know there's always risk. We walk outside, the bus comes,
Sure.
Right. But is there legit risk? I mean, you said that they pulled forward the Blackwell production expectation.
I don't know if it was versus their expectation, but versus ours that came in. So, I mean, the risks are a few, right? So there's always that cyclical risk. Is there, that seems to be off the table in the near term. We can talk about longer term, but the near term, fine. Longer term, I think the worry would be that there is a lot of investment that's happening, and eventually there has to be a real return on those assets, either driving revenue or driving efficiencies and saving costs, or ideally both for their customers. And if it were to turn out over time that the return is not there, then clearly the whole thing would come crumbling down for NVIDIA and for lots of others. I don't think that is the case, and it's not a risk now, but over time, certainly, you want to see business models starting to get built on this, sure.
What about interest rates? Do they matter?
Well, they're already high, right? They haven't mattered at this point. And
if they keep going higher a little bit, it doesn't matter.
I don't know. I'm not a macroeconomist, so I don't know.
But you don't look at that sort of thing and say, well, it could be a risk in the near term.
I mean,
at least.
Interest rates go high. It does tend to drive multiples lower. Although, again, it has not happened. Especially in the semi space, multiples are quite high, right? But certainly you watch it. But again, that's not idiosyncratic. That's not NVIDIA specific, right? Those are broad risks. Interest rates going higher and impacting things would impact lots of stuff.
Why is AMD up almost 3.5%?
Yeah,
is it the halo on this?
Yeah, probably. So again, you mentioned the whole XAI Musk story.
Yeah,
so,
because Broadcom's down. It's not like everything's up, but AMD's up.
Yeah. I mean, I think the players that are viewed as maybe more direct beneficiaries of AI may be up. Although I would argue that Broadcom is a direct beneficiary of AI as well.
But a lot of people make that argument as a cheaper way of playing NVIDIA. No, at this point, it's not that much cheaper.
Yeah, well, it's quite a bit cheaper. It's still very inexpensive. And by the way, Broadcom's a little bit of a different AI. You asked about risks to NVIDIA. One other risk is competition. The hyperscalers are doing their own chips. Broadcom is a key beneficiary of that. They do the work for the hyperscalers. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's only two companies out there that have really material AI stores, enough to offset anything else. Right now, it's NVIDIA and Broadcom. That's kind of it. Right.
Do we know for sure whether XAI is going to spend all this money with NVIDIA?
I don't know that we know anything for sure yet, but it does seem that they are going to be. They just raised money. It does seem they're going to be spending money. It does seem they'll likely be spending with NVIDIA. If they want to build an AI supercomputer over the time frame that they're talking about, they don't really have any choice. There's one option. It's NVIDIA.
AI demand has been unprecedented over the past year, driving the stock to new heights. NVIDIA recognizes revenue from GPUs used in AI in its data center division, which grew revenue by an astounding 427% year over year in the first quarter of fiscal 2025. While that's impressive, investors really wanted to see the quarter-over-quarter growth rate. And with revenue rising 23% from the fourth quarter's figure, it's clear that the demand for AI computing power is still growing. Nvidia doesn't give segment-specific guidance, but Q2 revenue is expected to be about $28 billion, indicating 107% year-over-year growth and an 8% quarter-over-quarter increase. This appears to be a slowdown, but Nvidia is starting to come up against more difficult comparisons. However, it consistently beat its guidance. For instance, the Q1 goal was $24 billion, while the actual figure was $26 billion. So Nvidia's business isn't slowing down, and it likely won't. According to Jensen Huang, the next industrial revolution has begun, with companies and countries partnering with Nvidia to shift the trillion-dollar traditional data centers to accelerated computing and build a new type of data center called AI factories to produce a new commodity, artificial intelligence. That's why Nvidia stock is still a buy. This might be the most important company in the world, and it's operating in many different growing markets. You can't really bet against Nvidia. But what do you think about Nvidia stock? Is it a buy at the current price? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section, and don't forget to tell us what your valuation for Nvidia is. If you would like to know what companies like Nvidia have been up to these past few days, go ahead and click on the next video on your screen. See you there.